Grace and peace and spoiler alert for the movie Cuties. My name's Ryan. I'm the movie pastor, and what I do is I watch movies and interpret them theologically. I interpret text for a living. It's what I do on Sunday morning, and it's also what I do when I go to the movie theater. So this isn't a channel about movie reviews where I tell you thumbs up, thumbs down. This also isn't a channel about, is it Christian appropriate? Does it have good Christian messages? And is the number of F-bombs low enough? I'm just not in charge of what your family watches and doesn't. Instead, I watch almost everything that comes out. I have a very high threshold for things that would bother other people, and I talk about them. And I talk about what they have to say and what impact they have for the people that are interested in talking about them. Since this movie is so controversial, I'm going to start by talking about why I watched it. Then I'm going to run you through the plot, because there's an element of this to which, bottom line, I don't recommend this movie, so there's a sense in which I watched it so you don't have to. And then finally, I'm going to do the normal movie pastor thing where I interpret it. So feel free to skip ahead if one of those doesn't interest you. But to start with, why did I watch this film? What made me take the time? My wife was also interested in watching it, to get her so she could watch it with me, because I don't want to do anything that's, edgy with our marriage, and watch this film that people have said is so horrible. Well, that's why. Because people have said it's so horrible. And especially because they've said not to watch it. I think it's really important to read banned books, and I think it's important to go and become curious about the things that people tell you not to become curious about, not to ask questions about, not to watch. Whenever there's something that people are passionate about, which they don't know about, or in which they have passionate beliefs that they ought not to know about it, that is how radicalization happens. That's how people get extremist ideas. That's how people get violent, and their sense of what is normal gets off kilter. So one of the most familiar times we saw that was with the Harry Potter nonsense, right? When Harry Potter first came out, there was this whole group of Christians that were saying, Harry Potter is witchcraft. And why is it your children, if they watch Harry Potter, they're gonna go devil worship. And if you read the books, you know that the themes and the way witches are used symbolically really isn't very different from the way they're used in, say, J.R.R. Tolkien. And in fact, those authors, Rowling and Tolkien, are comparable. Comparable, not to say they're equal, but you can compare one to the other. It's galas and pink ladies rather than apples and oranges. They developed this belief that you can't experience this. If you open this book, you'll be open to a world of witchcraft, and so it's important that we vocally condemn it, and it's important that we know nothing about it. This, of course, I think is well regarded now as having been ridiculous and just ill-informed. We get the same thing with Islamophobia. So this movie, Cuties, deals with Islam. It features one very important Muslim character, Amy's mom, and it does not depict Islam in a very positive light at all. But we have these people in the United States who believe that all Muslims are terrorists. They really have developed an ideology around Islamophobia. And that, again, is rooted in this idea of you have to know something and develop a strong opinion about Islam, but you must not study Islam, because there's this teaching among Islamophobics that Muslims have this belief called taqiyya, and taqiyya says that you can lie. You're allowed to lie about whatever you want to in order to try to convert people or forward Allah's agenda. Well, that's just not true. Taqiyya is an extremely obscure doctrine that is only in Shia Islam and has maybe been arguably Al-Qaeda has taken it and made it into something it's not, but most Muslims do not practice this, and if they did, it applies only in one situation, which is if you're going to die unless you deny your Muslim faith. So if someone puts a gun to your head, says, I'm going to kill you unless you say you're not a Muslim, you can say, I'm not a Muslim, and then go pray about it later and receive forgiveness. You can lie about that one thing. And this has been interpreted to like Muslims lie about everything. They'll tell you the different things that they believe, and it's all just a game, and they're all terrorists, and they're all trying to take over America, and it's not true. And more than that, it's radicalizing. Because what happens if you internalize that idea that like Muslims are lying about Islam, then the only person you can get true information about Islam about are extremists, are the people who say that all the Muslims are lying and they're trying to take over America. So like, oh, you don't talk to a Muslim and don't talk to someone who's not in the know, talk to me, and this results in more and more and more extreme beliefs. And so that's why I needed to watch Cuties and to figure out what it was for myself in order to kind of engage, because it is not what either side is presenting it as. It's not child pornography. It's not a sports movie about a dance team in which we're cheering for the dance team to like be extra sexy. But it's also not this brilliant piece of art that like is condemning of childhood sexuality and which rises above it. It swims in those waters and presents for the audience an opportunity to make its own conclusions. And so there's some moral ambiguity there. So let's get into that. Let's talk about a plot summary of Cuties. And I have some notes here. That's why I'm looking down here. So Amy, who is the main protagonist, is a Senegalese immigrant with a very strict Muslim mother. She is coming of age in Paris, and there's a room in her family's very small apartment. She has two brothers. There's this one room where they're just not allowed to go, and she doesn't know why they're not allowed to go. And she comes to find out after seeing like her mother weeping in front of that room once or twice. And she at one point hides under a bed and hears her mom on the phone talking about how heartbroken she is that her father, who is absent throughout this movie, is taking another wife. So he's engaging in a plural marriage, and this new room is to be for the new wife and presumably for the mother, for the father. And so this mom is heartbroken, and she's counseled to support this, to say she's really happy for the family, hopes Allah blesses them with many children, and support this in public. And also that Amy is to support this in public, even though this is heart-wrenching, this is terrible. And Amy deeply resents this, and in turn resents kind of everything about her upbringing as she's figuring out her life, doing the classic, teenager stuff, beginning to question authority and question reality. She's questioning Islam, and this particular culture of Senegalese Islam and everything that kind of has to do with it. Well, she gets connected with this group of girls at school who are just the exact opposite of everything her upbringing has been. They are brash and loudmouthed and disrespectful of authority. They dress in clothes that reveal a lot of midriff, and they're practicing this dance routine. So Amy is really enthralled and interested by this community of girls, and eventually, after connecting with one of them who lives in her apartment building and practicing the dance routine in the bathroom a while, she kind of gets in with the girls. And the more she gets in with the girls, the more extreme her behaviors become. Now, it is worth saying at this point, because rumors about this movie have said otherwise, these girls are not depicted as good in any way, shape, or form. This group, the Mignons, are unlikable, they are inappropriate, they are dim-witted, they're immature and unaware of how the world works, and we see that in them. We see that they're a ship without a rudder in many ways as the kind of narrative of the movie continues to unfold. So it's not this like Islam bad, dance troupe good. And by the way, it's not even a dance troupe. It's girls dancing in like a little, under an overpass by the drainage system. They're making up their dances on their own based on what they see on TV and what they catch on the internet that older women are doing. So they're trying to figure out what the older women are doing, which, by the way, what the older women are doing is debasing themselves. And so then they therefore start debasing themselves. And Amy gets mixed up into this. She steals money from her mom. She uses that money to buy clothes that are similar to the clothes that her friends are wearing, because prior to that, the closest she could do was kind of just wearing her little brother's t-shirt in order to show some midriff. And in one pivotal, kind of shocking scene in the movie, she has a phone which she has taken from her cousin. Her cousin catches her, tries to take the phone. She locks herself in the bathroom, and in like a last desperate use to get the most out of the phone she can, because this phone is her lifeline. I mean, this is me interpreting in the white spaces. Her phone's her lifeline to this world of like over-sexualized inappropriateness. She takes a picture of her genitals. Now this, with things people have heard about this movie, again, it stands to mention, this isn't shown, right? This is all off-screen. There is no nudity in this film. But you are given through camera angles the idea that she's taken this picture. And that's a horrible thing. She gets into deep trouble in school. People begin picking on her. She gets kicked out of the Mignons, of the Cuties. Her friends don't want to hang out with her anymore. They say, you have pushed it too far. We were about pushing boundaries, but you just went over the edge. People are expecting us to do things like that. We're not going there. And her friends won't hang out with her anymore. Her mom finds out and tries to exorcise a demon from her, or a devil. So there's this other really interesting scene in which her mom and her aunt, who have been training her up and getting her ready for her father's wedding to another bride, try to pray over her. And again, this is me interpreting things. She does what she thinks they expect of her, right? So they're trying to pray a demon out, or some kind of evil spirit. And so she begins to gyrate and twitch and move as a show of like performance of, are you happy now? Do you feel like you're saving me? But the moves that she does are moves that she knows from the dance troupe. And so she's doing this like, let the lust demon out of my body dance. But it's also this is actually the dance I learned kind of a thing. So to me, the director is drawing a parallel between religious performance, going through the motions of religion, and human sexuality performance, going through the motions of this game of men and women that the preteen girls are learning. That both of these are done for external reasons to try to gain approval in an amorphous way. No one really knows the actual rules. It's all kind of made up, it seems, in the director's mind. So the climax of the film, Amy, who's been replaced on the team with this other girl who had been kicked off earlier, pushes that girl into the river. And there's a moment where it looks like she thinks she might have killed this girl, because this girl can't swim. But the girl makes it to a buoy. Amy's like, okay, I'm not a murderer. I'm a book it. Goes to the dance competition. And that's the dance competition that was featured in this like really ill-conceived ad campaign. They wear that outfit. And the dance that they perform is intercut with a bunch of like faces grimacing, people booing, people looking down on them. So they're doing this this dance. I don't want to use the word sexy to describe it, but it's a dance that uses moves that you would be used to seeing in like a modern Miley Cyrus or a Shakira video, humping the floor and such. It is ugly and disturbing and disgusting, and people are disturbed and disgusted. And partway through that dance number, Amy hears the voice of the imam in her head who prayed over her. She's overcome with guilt, and she runs away from the dance routine. When she runs away from the dance routine, she makes it back to her aunt and her mom. Her aunt begins to castigate her, but her mom defends her, says, you don't have to come to the wedding. I know it was the wedding day, and I know you ran away to go do something. Just don't come to this disgusting, horrible wedding. And she doesn't. She puts on normal clothes. She goes outside, and she begins to jump rope. And that's where the movie ends, with Amy jumping rope, the camera kind of zooming out, making it seem with a big smile on her face that she's jumping like 2 stories high. So again, there's some symbolism on the part of the director there. She's found her middle ground, not into the extreme sexuality of the mignons and not the extreme conservatism of the societal expectations that are placed upon her mother. Now let's do the normal movie stuff. Let's talk about what this movie is really about. What does it mean? And I have some notes here. That's why I'm looking at it. Amy is at an age where she has only begun to start dealing with real adult problems. And yet she does not have an adult set of ways to deal with those problems. In particular, like a lot of people her age, she doesn't have any actual adults who can kind of speak into her life and guide her and give her real talk and real advice. And so she makes a lot of bad decisions. And in the midst of these bad decisions, as a result of all these bad decisions in this film, they all work out kind of all right. She doesn't break anything that can't be fixed. She doesn't do anything that she can't grow past and move past and learn from. So it seems to me that the core message of the film has to do with a slice of life, very warts and all, of what it looks like to grow up. And if it's saying anything through this slice of life, it seems to be saying that somehow we manage. We, the young women of the world, face challenges that you would not imagine looking at us, because so many of us have kind of weathered the storm and come through it and worked it all out kind of all right. That somehow through it all, that the battle is real, but we get through the battle, and most people don't ever even notice that it's been there. Ironic then, if that's the point of this movie, that nobody is engaging with it on that level. A lot like how nobody engages with young women on that level about what their life is really like, who they really are as people, as they are trying to figure out who they are as people. They get ignored and their struggles get overlooked. And this movie also is put in boxes of either an extreme reaction to a marketing campaign based on an image on a poster, or has a kind of element of the culture war, as a kind of archetype of art by women of color and this feminist presentation. It's really neither. It's not this great progressive movie that criticizes the sexualization of young women. There is moral complexity to the fact that 14-year-old girls who acted in this movie had to learn this dance in order to do it, in order for it to be intercut with people grimacing. And so we can deal with like the complexity of the fact that that something that's fake is real, right? That it's a fiction movie, but some real things had to happen in order for this fiction to take place. It's also not this. It's not child porn. It's not something that is just supporting and encouraging and built for pedophiles to try to groom young women into this way of thinking. Instead, it's something in the middle. It's a mess, is what it is as a movie, and in as much as it's a mess, it represents that young women are a mess. And the good news that the movie presents, and that I actually think is pretty consistent with real life, is that there is an amazing resilience that is demonstrated by not only our young women, but also our minority populations, our immigrant populations, which Amy also represents, to manage to take adversity and move along. And that, at least, I don't know that it was worth a pretty long and frankly pretty boring movie, but that's a pretty interesting conversation that we got to have. I hope you've enjoyed it. This has been MOVIEPASStor, and I'll see you next time.
And when in scenes of glory I sing